Clark.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Attorney-General. Advocacy Tasmania said yesterday in response to your refusal to establish an independent compensation scheme, nowhere else would it be appropriate to make victims beg for compensation for the very same people who harmed them in the first place. Imagine asking someone who survived family violence to go to their abuser and beg for compensation, then give their abuser the power to decide if they've done wrong and how much it would cost to make it right. It's absurd and disgusting. The people at the centre of these systems always get forgotten. Over the last decades, we've supported hundreds of clients to try and get justice from the Public Trustee. Their processes have been consistently obstructive and they've sought to protect their own. People rarely felt heard, processes could take years, and even then, simple complaints were left unresolved. Yet now our government believes the Public Trustee should consider their own victims' compensation claims. The same organisation that the government-owned independent review found to have genuinely misunderstood their legislative obligations for at least 26 years. This is the wrong organisation to be making decisions about the harms it has caused and the amount of compensation to pay. That is an extraordinary statement. Attorney, will you reconsider and establish an independent, fair and accessible compensation scheme?
Honourable Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Member for Clark for her question. Can I correct you in the interpretation of what I said yesterday? It's not the Public Trustee who would determine the amount in an ex gratia system. But I will take members back to, and the member for Clark, and indeed Advocacy Tasmania. The reason I appointed an independent, or called for an independent review, was so that someone independent of government, independent of the Public Trustee, who is a GBE, could determine any likely failures or recommendations that needed to be made.
That's right.
28 recommendations came out of that independent review from Damien Bugg AM QC, very esteemed barrister and known to most of us. As I said yesterday, the independent review did not suggest that there were any fundamental failings or individual harms that would warrant an actual compensation scheme. Now, I have accepted, as on behalf of the government, the 28 recommendations, and so has the Public Trustee. In our 2022-23 state budget, we have put significant funding, namely $4.3 million, for the implementation of the recommendations. Separate from that, an additional $4.3 million for the Public Trustee to carry out its community service obligation. Now, that funding is necessary for the implementation of all of those recommendations. Aside from that, I have said I am introducing this year significant amendments to the Guardianship and Administration Act to change the way we deal with these matters. That is directly as a result of the TLRI work and now the independent review. Our government, Mr Speaker, is absolutely committed to the 28 recommendations, some of which will take a bit longer to implement, but some of which are being dealt with as we speak. And as I said, the second tranche to the Guardianship and Administration Act will be tabled this year. This is significant work. As I said, the government will always consider appropriate ex gratia payments in circumstances where there are instances of actual loss. But I would urge stakeholders to consider our absolute and total commitment to the 28 recommendations from this review. We haven't resiled from any of those recommendations, and so it is important that we work our way through those recommendations, Mr Speaker, and I would ask the member for Clark that when ministers take time to provide an answer to her, that she also provides that on her social media site.
Mr Speaker. Honourable Member for Bass.